Su Wei was a beggar picking up garbage in her previous life, but she didn't expect to be a beggar in this life. However, she also had the reputation of being a conductor, allowing her to pick up garbage openly. However, everyone was mocking her as a command with no talent but no ability. Unexpectedly, while other commanders were worried about resources, Su Wei took out her storage ring and took out a bunch of resources. Everyone. Where did you get so many resources? Su Wei hugged the storage ring tightly and entrusted Chu Baba, I picked it up myself. Other people who have been robbed of resources. It's clear that she snatched them from them, okay. Su Wei said that as long as anything falls to the ground is garbage, it can be picked up. The Empire flower, regarded as garbage. After winning the Star Military Academy Championship, the principal asked her what reward she wanted. Su Wei hesitated for a moment and cautiously said, I want a larger storage ring. Principal. What is the reason why you are so reserved when it comes to rewards? Su Wei, holding the oversized storage ring, expressed great satisfaction in continuing to conquer the Starry Sea. The flower of a certain empire came to the planet owner overnight carrying resources and said, open the door, my wife is coming to pick up trash. Planet Lord. Are you polite? Lightning Protection Points 1. The female lead is not a strong woman, but a growth-oriented female lead who is imperfect and flawed, and has a more easy-going and outgoing personality. 2. The male lead has been confirmed, in Kinluozu, and the interstellar setting has an average age of 300 years per person. There is an age difference between the male and female leads. And appear late. 3. Thank you for your support. Don't spray if you don't like it. Cover face, keywords of the novel. StarCraft Commander, professional garbage picking with no pop-ups. StarCraft Commander, professional garbage picking complete collection download. StarCraft Commander, professional garbage picking latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Rebirth of Garbage Star. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 1 Rebirth of Garbage Star. Waste without mental energy, find a place to solve it. As soon as Xiao Wu became aware, he heard a disgusted male voice, and then couldn't hold on and fell into a coma. I don't know how long it took, but when she opened her eyes and saw the azure sky, she found herself transformed into a child, still a baby. Xiao Wu didn't know how long she had slept, but felt so hungry that she couldn't control her emotions and burst into tears. Click. I don't know if she had an illusion of hunger, but Xiao Wu seemed to hear something moving. Her teary eyes slowly looked towards the place where the sound was coming from and saw an old lady with a hunched figure. The old lady couldn't bear it, but she didn't walk over, her toes vaguely pointing towards the other side. Xiao Wu stopped crying and stretched out his hands to shake in a babbling manner. This is her last hope. If the old lady doesn't save her, she may really starve to death. She did this action for about a minute, and the old lady moved. She walked over and squatted down, her face full of vicissitudes filled with both helplessness and worry. She took out a tube of light blue liquid from the cloth bag she had sewn and patched, opened it under Xiao Wu's curious gaze, and poured half for Xiao Wu to drink. Xiao Wu suddenly felt a sense of fullness and couldn't help but hiccup. Feeling like the old lady was looking at him, Xiao Wu bent his mouth and tried to make a smile. The old lady's expression was moved. She stuffed the remaining half of the liquid back into her pocket, reached out and picked up Xiao Wu. She murmured to herself in a local dialect, "You're so well behaved, who can bear to lose you?" Xiao Wu is a bit tired again, closed his eyes and took a nap, with a smile on his lips. It's great that she survived. Old lady, are you crazy? You picked up a little brat again. You can't even eat enough now. But big dog, she's so small. Don't call me big dog. I have a name, my name is Su Qingyu. I told you that I will leave this garbage dump sooner or later. Xiao Wu was awakened by a loud noise and opened his eyes in confusion. The next second, he was grabbed by his neck with both hands. Wow. What are you doing, big dog? She's your sister. The old lady hurriedly pushed Su Qingyu away and comforted Xiao Wu, who was crying incessantly, "It's okay, it's okay." Su Qingyu gritted her teeth and said, "I am not your son, nor is I her sister. She will only pick up garbage in such places like you when she lives, and in the end, she will be killed by her own kindness." After Xiao Wu realized it, he didn't cry anymore. Instead, he turned his head to look at the person who almost killed him. He looked less than 10 years old, thin and small, with dark skin, dressed in tattered clothes like an old lady, but with a hint of gloomy pride on his face. Xiao Wu could tell at a glance that this person was ruthless and ruthless. They usually live the longest among beggars because they are cruel enough. The old lady couldn't help but shed tears as she listened to what he said, "Big dog, you were also raised by me from such a young age. You don't have parents, so I have to live frugally to raise you. How come you have become such a heartless and ruthless person?" Su Qingyu's expression moved as he stared at Xiao Wu's tender, egg-like face for a moment, then frowned and looked away. "If you want to raise it yourself, I won't give her a bite anyway." The old lady hugged Xiao Wu and let out several curses of wrongdoing. "Whether you recognize it or not, this is your sister. From now on, you can call her Go." The old lady kindly reached out her finger and touched Xiao Wu's face. "Xiao Wu. 2 dogs. This is her lifelong name. Xiao Wu pupil earthquake." Su Qingyu couldn't help but retort, "Old lady, your ability to choose a name over the past decade has not grown at all. Then you give it to your sister, you have an idea." The old lady didn't get angry when she was said like this, asking him as if she had never argued before. Su Qingyu snorted and knew that the old lady had softened, so he cooperated and took out a tattered book from his pocket. He lowered his head and flipped through the book, his expression serious and devout, completely different from his fierce expression just now. This character is called Wei, which is the name of a flower in ancient China. "Let's call her Su Wei, it's better than calling her Go." Su Qingyu pointed out the character and said proudly, regardless of whether they could understand it or not. The old lady nodded with a smile and said, "All right, from now on, the little one will be called Su Wei." Su Wei is really a good name. Xiao Wu, no, it's Su Wei, blinking her eyes as she looks at the two of them. "Su Wei, let's live well." There was a hint of hope in the old lady's cloudy eyes. Su Qingyu snorted coldly upon hearing these words. "Let's talk about it if she can survive." Thinking to himself, Su Qingyu didn't say it, after all, this old lady likes this little brat so much now. It's an honor to be able to survive in a place like Garbage Star. ZH, welcome to watch ZH. Special guests in attendance include Marshall Qin from District 9, Marshall Hua from District 13, and Marshall Wu from District 3. The three of them will personally present awards to the top 3 military academies in the Xianji Galaxy Star Military Academy League this year. Now, let's invite the military academy that won the first place to come on stage and accept the award. A dark and unadorned thing took away the wrench in her hand, and her mismatched amber pupils stared at the old playback screen that she accidentally smashed. Inside the screen, the glamorous female host smiled and introduced her to everyone, making everyone feel better involuntarily. This dark and unremarkable thing is exactly Su Wei. She has been living on the garbage planet for 13 years. In her previous life, she was just a beggar without a father or mother. In this life, she was reborn in this world and was also abandoned. However, this time she was adopted by a kind old lady, who had never experienced what family love was. She didn't understand why the old lady was willing to feed her even if she was hungry. Su Wei, who fought fiercely with others for a meal in her previous life, really doesn't understand. However, before she could understand, her mother-in-law died. At the age of 6, she did not starve to death, but died of illness. Even before her death, her mother-in-law was still worried about how she would survive in the future. After Su Wei buried her mother-in-law in peace, she cried so sadly for the first time in her 2 lives. When she almost broke her leg while stealing steamed buns, she didn't cry. Even if she starved to death, she didn't leave a single tear. However, she cried so much for this unrelated mother-in-law that she almost fainted. Su Wei thought that she actually wanted to have a family. However, as a child adopted by her mother-in-law, her nominal brother came on the day of her mother-in-law's death. After seeing her mother-in-law, she hurriedly left with only one sentence. "Don't bother me." She seemed to have suddenly returned to her previous life, floating alone in the world. Thinking of this, it was a bit sad for spring and autumn. Su Wei shook her head and temporarily forgot about those unhappiness, continuing to search in the garbage dump. No one remembers the original name of Garbage Star, only knowing that it was a planet abandoned by interstellar space. As one of the main stars, Blue Star's exclusive garbage dump, Su Wei occasionally finds some good things in the garbage dump. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Heavenly Landing Mech. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 2. Heavenly Landing Mech. This world is not the world before Su Wei. In her previous life, although Su Wei was just a beggar, she also heard many things about cultivating immortals from other people. Unfortunately, she did not have a spiritual root and was not destined for the immortal path. She starved to death early on. In this world, no one cultivates immortals. What people admire is something called spiritual power. The higher the spiritual power, the more powerful the mecha can be driven. After training, spiritual power can invisibly accomplish many things, and Su Wei is not sure about other details. Click it. Su Wei regained consciousness and used a wrench to pull out the power device in the playback screen, happily carrying it home. Speaking of home, it's actually an iron house built with a pile of scrap metal, as long as it can sleep. With the power supply, I can take a hot shower in a while. Su Wei thought to herself, but didn't notice someone ahead, so she bumped her head into it. Not good means. Before Su Wei could finish speaking, she looked up and saw the expression of disgust on her face. She silently swallowed the remaining words. What are you doing with these scrap metal? Su Qingyu looked at her as if looking at something dirty. Indeed, she hasn't taken a shower for half a month, and because she spends her days flipping through the garbage, her whole body is stinky. There are also residential areas in the Garbage Star without garbage, but Su Wei doesn't want to interact with others, so she has been living in the garbage dump all along. Anyway, she came through this way in her previous life. But she didn't expect Su Qingyu to come and find her. Since the old lady died, he had come to see her once, and she had never seen this nominal brother again. Seeing Su Wei in a daze, Su Qingyu frowned and sternly warned, "It's not safe near here these days, go somewhere else." Without waiting for Su Wei to answer, she turned her head and left. Su Wei held the power device in her hand and looked at his back. She quietly ran back, still preparing to take a shower. Bright crystal, put a bright crystal. Su Wei hummed a song and skillfully assembled the machinery. Finally, she put a yellow crystal in the garbage dump, and the entire machinery could start. After so many years of exploration, she has long been proficient in using these tools. It is said that the universal currency in this world is something called star coins, and these crystals are an energy source often used in machinery. Crystal varies in color from red to purple, with red having the least energy and purple having the greatest energy. Her yellow one is already enough for her to take a few showers. Su Wei thought happily and touched her waist-length hair, which had grown again after not being cut for a long time. Cut it short later, bang. Pai Li Pa. The deafening roar interrupted Su Wei's thoughts. She had returned to the room and looked up at the shaky roof above her head. Fortunately, she had built it strong enough, and the battlefield was still shaking. The sound came from outside, and Su Wei was huddled inside the room. She couldn't help but be curious as she looked out through the cracks in the wall. Smoke and dust were flying, making it difficult to see clearly. However, what heavy object should have hit the ground to make such a loud noise? But isn't it time to take out the trash now? Ha! Unexpectedly, Su Wei caught a glimpse of a faint blue light in the smoke. She suddenly became interested, but dared not go out. After the smoke dissipated for a while, she looked again and saw a large white object lying on the ground, with the glowing object on top of it. If Su Wei remembers correctly, this seems to be the mecha mentioned on the playback screen. The mech remained motionless, and Su Wei couldn't resist her curiosity. She opened the door and walked over. As she approached, she realized that not only was a mech lying on the ground, but also a person. The person collapsed to the ground, looking only in his 20s. His black hair covered the ground, and even the expensive white gold trimmed dress he was wearing was dirty with dust. Su Wei leaned closer and saw his handsome profile, which was showing a striking charm, and couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This is even more beautiful than those cultivators. Surprised, Su Wei didn't forget her purpose. She looked around and found a glowing blue crystal right inside the chest of the mecha. Curiously, she picked it up and took a look. "What are you doing?" The man's voice, even colder than ice shards, seemed like a sharp blade from Kai Feng, piercing directly at Su Wei. The person got up at some point, as if he had been injured. One hand covered the arm of the other, but he stood tall and straight, like an unyielding cypress tree. Su Wei instinctively grabbed the sapphire into her arms and met his sparkling ice-blue eyes, stunned. What a beautiful color! Before Su Wei could answer, his cold gaze fell on the blue crystal in her arms. "Is this yours?" "I'm sorry, I didn't take it on purpose, I was just curious to take a look." Su Wei regained consciousness, scared by the cold air on his body, and trembling, pulled out the blue crystal and returned it to him. He looked at the blue crystal with a faint gaze, more precisely, it was held by Su Wei's black, carbon-like hands. Ignoring Su Wei's trembling heart, he bypassed her and entered the mecha. Boom! The mecha suddenly stood up and flew into the sky. The impact of the mecha on the ground lifted Su Wei, who was very close to the mecha, over 10 meters away. Without realizing it, she was thrown upside down. Still alive. Su Wei felt a bit dizzy and couldn't help but feel grateful. Just now she thought she was going to die. Wow, the blue crystal, I've picked it up again. Su Wei shook her head and forgot about what happened earlier, taking out the blue crystal in her hand, her eyes full of surprise. However, she hadn't been pleasantly surprised for long. The next second, her already shaky room collapsed with a loud bang. Su Wei. No way, we have to rebuild it again. Su Wei fell into a state of sadness. When Su Qingyu rushed over, he saw a scene where a black and unremarkable thing was huddled in the ruins, abandoning itself. Su Qingyu's eyelids twitched as she walked over with anger and shouted, "Didn't I tell you to leave quickly? I want to take a shower first." Su Wei was shouted at by him, her tone weakened a bit. "This place can't be left any longer, come with me." Su Qingyu glared at her with dissatisfaction, as if she was some shady burden. Su Wei knew that he had always disliked her, and it was kind-hearted to remind her. She didn't mind either, so she stuffed the sapphire into her pocket and followed Su Qingyu with a thud. This is her first time visiting the residential area of Garbage Star. Although the people here are also garbage collectors, they dress better and are much cleaner than her. Su Wei noticed that many people were looking at her and couldn't help but shrink behind Su Qingyu. Su Qingyu glanced at her without saying anything. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Interstellar Pirates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Interstellar Pirates. She dared not pull Su Qingyu's whitewashed sleeves, afraid of being thrown out, so she could only follow closely. Su Qingyu walked in various twists and turns for a long time, and finally stopped in front of a door that could only accommodate one person. He took out the key to open the door and pushed Su Wei in. Su Wei was pushed by him and stumbled, barely standing firm. "No, don't touch anything in the room." Su Qingyu took out a tube of nutrient solution from somewhere and threw it to her. Su Wei hasn't eaten anything for a long time, so she opened the nutrient solution and wolfed it down. Expired nutrient solution tastes unpleasant, but it's better than starving to death. Su Wei patted her flattened belly. The starship of the interstellar pirates was shot down by the Imperial Guard on the garbage star. If I could find their hiding place. Su Qingyu was speaking enthusiastically, but when he met Su Wei's bewildered eyes, he lost interest in an instant. "Forget it, you don't understand anything anyway. It's not safe outside, so just stay inside the house and don't go anywhere." "Oh," Su Wei nodded obediently. Su Qingyu left, and Su Wei had nothing to do, so she lowered her head and counted the patterns on the blanket on the ground. Counting, she fell asleep and woke up the next morning. Su Qingyu didn't come back. She touched her slightly hungry stomach and looked at the storage cabinet in the room, afraid to look for anything to eat. She waited like this, but in the afternoon, Su Qingyu still didn't come back. "I'm a bit hungry," Su Wei said to herself. Being hungry is the norm for her two lives, and she can only talk about it for a while. Bang! Bang! Interstellar pirates, it's interstellar pirates, run! A series of collapses and people's desperate cries spread in the air. At the moment Su Wei discovered the collapse, the danger alarm in her mind kept ringing, and she ran out of the house without looking back. Just 1 second after she left, the house collapsed with a loud bang. Su Wei didn't have time to regret the things inside the room. She watched the others running away in panic and felt that she couldn't sit idly by. She randomly found a direction and ran away. As she ran, she suddenly saw a retractable knife falling from the ground. With a bright eye, she picked it up and continued running. There was no one else nearby. She lost her way and looked up at these buildings that looked similar in appearance in confusion. Where is this? Suddenly, one hand covered Su Wei's mouth and forcefully pulled her into the alley, causing Su Wei to struggle. "Don't shout, otherwise I'll kill you." A rough male voice came from behind Su Wei, afraid that he might actually take action. She obediently quieted down. "I let go and ask you a few questions. If you shout out unknowingly, don't blame me for being ruthless. If you understand, just nod." Su Wei nodded, covered her hand and withdrew it. She quickly took 2 breaths of air. She also saw clearly the person's appearance. He was a chubby man weighing nearly 200 pounds, with a scar on his right eye, indicating that he was not a good person at first glance. And he didn't even cover up his appearance. Su Wei let out a click in her heart, knowing that today was more or less unlucky. She didn't show any signs on her face, as if she was extremely scared. She trembled and asked, "What are you doing?" Her hand hidden in her sleeve clenched the small knife. Fat people don't doubt her, and there's no need to doubt her. Can a child the size of a bean still threaten him? He sternly asked, "Where is this? Where is the orbit of the spacecraft?" "Ah. I don't know." Su Wei really didn't know, but in the eyes of the fat man, it was just a deliberate cover-up. Suddenly, he was furious and grabbed Su Wei's collar, lifting her up. "To be honest, you lackeys of the Empire, believe it or not, I'll kill you now." Su Wei was suffocated by his action and said, "I really don't know." She forcefully broke off her hand, and the telescopic knife popped out. "Only this chubby guy can lean closer, The chubby man suddenly made a strange sound in his mouth, and his hands suddenly lost strength and let go. Su Wei fell to the ground with a loud bang, covering her neck and breathing heavily. She looked up at the shadow, and Su Qingyu held a small knife in his hand. The blade pierced through the fat man's heart, with veins bulging on the pale back of his hand. The ferocious appearance of each blade made his eyes tinge with a hint of ferocity. He suddenly pulled out the blade, spraying blood all over his body. Even his face was stained with blood, and his red lips, as if he had just drunk blood, were extremely terrifying. After stabbing him, he still felt resentful and stabbed him a few more times, dying to the death. Su Wei's mind was blank and she felt a bit at a loss. Suddenly, she forgot Su Qingyu's name and instinctively let out a growling voice like a small beast. "Brother." This sound awakened Su Qingyu's mind. He walked over with a knife, and the bright red liquid flowed down the tip of the knife onto the ground, like the reaper of life. Kushue saw his hands shaking. He squatted down and looked at Su Wei's amber eyes. In a cold tone, he couldn't hide his anxiety and said, "He didn't do anything to you, did he?" Su Wei shook her head and looked down at his hand holding the knife. "No," she said. Su Qingyu seemed to breathe a sigh of relief and noticed Su Wei's gaze. He paused and stood up, ready to leave. Su Wei quickly got up from the ground and chased after Su Qingyu. She looked at Su Qingyu's chin, hesitated for a moment, and reached out to grab the small knife he was holding in his hand. He spoke hoarsely, "What are you doing? You can use my knife, your one is dirty." Su Wei took out the retractable knife she found and handed it over as if offering a treasure. Looking into Su Wei's clear and emotionless eyes, his heart calmed down for some reason. He turned his head and said, "No need, you can keep it for yourself." Su Wei let out a cry, but did not force her to follow behind him silently. "I'm going to the interstellar pirate starship, it's very dangerous," Su Qingyu suddenly blurted out. "Oh," Su Wei nodded and added after thinking for a moment, "I'll go too." Su Qingyu didn't speak, so Su Wei assumed that he had agreed. As Su Wei walked, she saw some sparkling small stones falling from the ground not far away, each about the size of her little finger-nail cap, which was the laser dark green color. She liked it very much and picked up more than 10 of them. As Su Qingyu was about to walk away, Su Wei quickly ran to follow her. Su Qingyu cast a glance, and she pursed her lips and said happily, "Brother, you see I found a small stone. Why are you picking up these useless things?" Su Qingyu lacked interest. Su Wei knew he was just a person with a sharp tongue and a heart full of tofu. Without arguing with him, she put the small stone in her pocket and patted it contentedly. After walking for a while, Su Qingyu stopped behind a falling boulder and extended half of his head to look outside. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Communication Device. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Communication Device. The interstellar pirate starship was shot down, with its left wing buried in the soil and temporarily unable to move. This is his best chance, a chance to get him out of this ruined place. Su Wei is much shorter than him and can't see anything, just waiting to listen to his commands. "Follow me closely." Su Qingyu pushed her and walked out on his own. Su Wei obeyed the command and closely followed behind his buttocks. The patrolling pirates happened to leave, and Su Qingyu and Su Wei entered directly through the gate. He had stepped on them before, but now he easily walked inside. These pirates are now too busy for themselves, as long as they are careful, no one will notice him. The starship has 2 floors, and Su Qingyu is going to a pirate leader's room on the 2nd floor, which contains what he needs. The two were about to cross the corner when Su Wei's ears were sharp and she heard footsteps. She grabbed Su Qingyu's sleeve and pulled him back. Su Qingyu also heard the footsteps getting closer and closer. If he were to run away now, he would definitely startle them. "Give me your little stone," Su Qingyu turned his head and said to her. Su Wei widened her eyes and looked at him with an expression of, "How could you do this?" Su Qingyu. "Hurry up." Su Wei reluctantly took out a small stone for him. Su Qingyu threw the small stone to the other side, attracting the pirates who were originally going towards them. He took the opportunity to leave with Su Wei. Next, he also used this action and safely reached the 2nd floor. Su Wei, on the other hand, had a broken face and almost put the 3 words, unhappy, on her face. Su Qingyu couldn't stand her and said, "It's just a few broken stones. I'll go out and pay you back." Su Wei decided not to argue with him. Su Qingyu sneaked into the room to search for information. He opened it and looked at it, as if he was scared by the content inside. After a while, he realized that he was about to leave when the starship actually started. "Attention everyone, those Imperial dogs have discovered us and need to be transferred immediately. Everyone, prepare your weapons and be ready for battle at any time." The angry roar of the interstellar pirates came from the loudspeaker, and Su Qingyu tightened his brow and pulled Su Wei back to the pirate leader's room. It was a mess outside, and he was not afraid of them coming back. Although there is also a possibility of being discovered, Su Qingyu can't handle so much anymore. He has been waiting for this day for too long. "Brother, what is this?" Su Wei asked like a curious baby. "Is the file bag in his hand paper?" "It's a list of undercover agents arranged by Chaos in the Empire," Su Qingyu explained briefly. Su Wei's little brain pouted and expressed that she didn't quite understand, but adhering to her principle of having a hard time and only wanting to live well without causing any trouble, she didn't ask further. It's not good to know too much about some things. This is the statement made by Su Wei as a beggar for so long. Su Qingyu looked a bit anxious. He slightly opened the curtains and peeked outside, muttering to himself, "That model of mech doesn't look much like an empire. The blue tail gradient silver, can it be a federation? Empire. Federation." Su Wei tilted her head in thought for a while, as if she had heard these 2 names on the playback screen. "If it's the Federation, I still have a chance. The Federation advocates peace, and if we know there are 2-inch hostages inside Star Airlines, we won't attack easily." Su Qingyu's eyes lit up, but he immediately became difficult again. "How can we contact them? Junk Star doesn't have any communication devices." "Brother, look, I just found an iron box on the ground." At this moment, Su Wei's noisy voice annoyed him. Just as he was about to scold her, he suddenly felt that the iron box in Su Wei's hand was a bit familiar. A communication device from hundreds of years ago. Su Qingyu snatched it over, surprised and puzzled. How could there be such an outdated communication device that was eliminated here? "The communicator." Su Wei repeated his words. Su Qingyu played with it a few times, and the communicator made a piercing noise. He reluctantly gave up and said, "It's really broken." He didn't have much disappointment and turned to thinking about other possibilities. Su Wei looked at him and reached out her little hand to retrieve the iron box from his hand. Su Qingyu only glanced at her upon seeing this. Su Wei picked up the iron box and carefully looked at it, feeling that it was similar to the machinery she had modified. She was simply bored, so she used a retractable knife to pry open the box cover, took out the rusty parts, wiped them, and reinstalled them. The power supply was also an issue. When prying open the power box, Su Wei took out a small piece of blue crystal and stuffed it in. The communicator made a sizzling sound, and Su Wei impatiently clenched her fist and hit it, and it immediately settled down. "Hello, hello," Su Wei said mischievously into the communicator. Su Qingyu was restless and said, "Su Wei, can I tell you to be quiet?" "Hello, this is the Federal 7th District Starship. Who is requesting communication?" The communicator politely asked, and Su Wei was stunned for a moment. Just as she was about to answer, she was quickly snatched by Su Qingyu. "Su Wei. Why do you always grab her things?" Su Wei ran to the side in a sullen mood and flipped through the garbage. "Cough cough, hello, I'm cough cough, my name is Su Qingyu, and I'm currently on a pirate starship. I hope you can save me and my sister." Su Qingyu's tone was particularly sincere and respectful, which made Su Wei, who had been mocked by him, cast a surprised look. Her cheap brother actually has a day to talk well. Civilian. The person on the communicator seemed to pause for a moment. Yes, and I just found a top-secret file about the Empire with the pirates. I think you should be interested if you are willing to rescue us. Su Qingyu's emotions had slowly calmed down and he began to talk to the other party about the conditions. The person seemed to be asking, and after a moment, he replied, "Okay, we will conduct a rescue operation for both of you. Please temporarily protect yourself." "Okay." Su Qingyu's mood brightened slightly, and he hung up the phone with a smile on his face. He turned to look at Su Wei, wanting to tell her the good news, but saw the room that had been turned upside down and her still flipping through the cabinets. Su Qingyu. Su Wei, who has gained a lot, feels better again. There is nothing more secure than her package full of things. Will someone called FedEx come to pick us up later? Su Wei turned her head and asked him after listening to the phone. It's the 7th District of the Federation, which is under Marshal Ye's management, Su Qingyu said. Seeing Su Wei's bewildered expression, he decided not to argue with her ignorance due to her good performance just now. Science Popularization said. We are in the Xianji Galaxy, which is divided into two forces. The Empire advocating war and the Federation advocating peace. They are also divided into 1 to 13 districts, managed by different factions marshals. Marshal Yi is from the Federation side. If I remember correctly, the blue star associated with our garbage star is the main star of the 7th district. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Setting Sail. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Setting Sail. Su Wei tried hard to digest what he said, clearly speaking in Chinese. Why did she just listen in such a daze? Su Qingyu didn't expect her to understand either. After explaining, he stood in front of the window and observed the situation outside. Su Wei is picking at her small garbage pile. Some things are too big to take away, which is a pity. She carefully stuffed the things into her clothes pocket and reached out to stroke the bulging folds over and over again. Although she knew it wasn't as good as before, she was still afraid that someone might snatch the things she hadn't hidden properly. Beggars, especially female beggars like her who are powerless, are 100% robbed. Even if they find good things, they must quickly switch hands and go out, otherwise they will suffer big losses. Hey, this world is really nice now. Su Wei sighed. At least here, she doesn't have to rack her brains, thinking all day about how to steal food from those harmless mouths. Picking up garbage every day can keep you alive, that's really good. Here we go. Su Qingyu whispered a sentence, and Su Wei blinked her eyes. She didn't understand the meaning of what he said. The floor where she was originally sitting suddenly tilted, and her buttocks made a gorgeous intimate contact with the wall. Pain. Su Wei's expression was like crumpled paper. She felt like her spine was broken and knocked off. Looking at Su Qingyu again, he had already prepared to grab the clothes pole fixed in the room and stood there intact. Su Wei. What a great brother. Feeling the marks of movement under her buttocks again, Su Wei didn't calm down anymore. Do she need to do it again? She was crawling around to find something to pull, but time didn't wait. The floor began a new round of movement, and Su Wei couldn't stand steady. A dog-eating shit face fell on the ground. But fortunately, her hand grabbed the leg of the bed and she didn't get thrown out to perform like a blossoming buttocks. This action lasted for about 10 minutes, and the exact time was uncertain for Su Wei because she was so shaken that she almost vomited. After finally stopping, Su Qingyu suppressed the discomfort in his stomach and cursed a few times that the person driving the starship was driving like shit. He turned his head and saw his cheap sister lying on the ground, dying. TSK. This starship is already under the control of the 7th District. Once again, this starship has been under the control of the 7th District. Put down your weapons and capture it. The Federation will not harm the prisoners. Listening to the sound of the speaker, Su Qingyu's heart that he had been carrying finally fell. He picked up the information, picked up Su Wei, who was in a daze, and half dragged her out the door. At this point, the pirates could no longer be seen in the corridor, but Su Qingyu did not give up his vigilance. Fortunately, he walked to the gate without any accidents. "Are you the person who sent the communication?" There were several people standing at the entrance, and the speaker was the tall man standing at the front, dressed in blue and white military uniform. He had a stern and unpleasant face under his golden hair, and when those eyes looked at him, it would make people couldn't help but feel timid. "It's me." Su Qingyu instinctively averted his gaze and dared not look directly at him. "How did you appear on the pirate starship?" He stared straight at Su Qingyu, his interrogative tone quite displeasing. Su Qingyu opened her mouth and heard Su Wei's soft and sticky voice. "I was caught by pirates. My brother was trying to save me." "Uncle, don't blame him, okay?" At this moment, he realized Su Wei's existence and heard this soft voice. His iron-hearted heart also softened for a moment, but he still asked dutifully, "What did the pirates catch you for?" "They are greedy for my beauty," Su Wei explained earnestly as she watched him. He felt a momentary jamming. It's not because he doesn't believe it, but because the two people standing in front of him are more and more embarrassed. Su Qingyu's clothes were all covered in dried bloodstains, and her hair had been slightly tidied up, but Su Wei's whole body was dirty. Upon closer inspection, she could still smell a foul odor. Her disheveled hair was scattered behind her, and her face was dark all over, except for her clear and bright eyes that stood out slightly. Beauty. He began to doubt the aesthetics of these interstellar pirates. "General Ikes, all the pirates are under control. Should we return immediately?" At this moment, a young man wearing a military uniform of similar color ran over to inquire. He, also known as Ikes, nodded and said, "Let's tell Marshal Qin that we'll take the people away first, without bothering him." The young man answered yes and then ran away. Ikes turned his head to look at the two of them again and opened his mouth slightly. I have information about the chaotic species in my hand, which I obtained from the pirate leader's room." Su Qingyu looked at him without avoiding his gaze. Ikes couldn't help but be surprised in his heart by his ability to bear it so quickly. He was able to look directly at himself, and his senses toward Su Qingyu had improved a lot, but he didn't show any signs on his face. "Oh. Chaos Seed. General Ikes." A man next to Ikes exclaimed in shock, afraid to reveal too much, anxiously looking at Ikes. Ikes glanced at him and said to Su Qingyu, unable to tell his emotions, "You come with me." Su Wei looked up at him, and Su Qingyu nodded with a tense face. He let go of Su Wei and followed behind Ikes without looking back. The remaining people looked at Su Wei and looked at each other, unsure of how to handle it properly. Su Wei didn't know either. In the moment she looked away, she thought she should have been abandoned again. However, being abandoned didn't count as much. After all, Su Qingyu didn't owe him anything and even took care of her for a while. "That little sister, come and sit here," said a female officer waving at her as she stood alone. Su Wei shook her head and smiled, "Thank you, sister. I'll just wait for my brother below." She walked around the group of people and got off the starship. She found a relatively large piece among a group of broken stones and dusted it before sitting on it. Su Wei waited for a long time, until they all cleaned up the mess, and when they all boarded the spacecraft and returned to the starship, she looked at the other side of the sky full of darkened sky, feeling that her life was also like this. "Although I know I am a burden, I am still looking forward to a rare family relationship. Just go back." Su Wei patted her buttocks and stood up. She wasn't very sad, just a little disappointed. She reached out and touched the sapphire in her pocket, feeling a little better. Boom! Su Wei turned around and heard the sound of the 7th Zone starship launching behind her. The strong wind curled up her hair and clothes, leaving her with no time to attend. She lifted her foot and prepared to leave. I said, "Where are you going?" A familiar voice suddenly sounded in the wind, and Su Wei couldn't hear it very accurately. She turned her head and saw Su Qingyu, who appeared here at an unknown time, momentarily stunned. The expression on Su Qingyu's face seemed somewhat disdainful and arrogant. He stood there, like summoning a pet. Not yet, the starship is about to take off. Su Wei tilted her head. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Enrollment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Enrollment. Little sister, you look so cute. The sister who helped wipe Su Wei's hair didn't hide her praise. Su Wei, who was pulled to take a shower as soon as she boarded the starship, looked at herself in the mirror and had to admit that her sister was telling the truth. Her hair is black with a chestnut tint, and due to malnutrition, it has become somewhat dry. However, this does not affect her natural beauty. She believes that this is mostly inherited from her parents. She is very thin, unhealthy, but her face is a bit fleshy. When she smiles, there are shallow pear curls, and under her curled eyelashes, there are a pair of watery eyes with a pure and clear color. Because there is still water vapor in her eyes after taking a shower, it is hazy, with a slightly red nose, red lips, and white teeth, like a vivid doll. Su Wei attributes all of this to her parents' genes, but unfortunately she only knows that she is an orphan. My hair has dried. Sister put down her handkerchief and couldn't help but rub Su Wei's little head. Su Wei smiled shyly and said, "Thank you, sister." "You're welcome. How old is my little sister this year?" "I feel even younger than my sister." Sister compared her height and curiously said. Su Wei obediently replied, "I'm 13 years old this year." 13 years old. "Not at all," said the sister in surprise, "you look less than 10 years old." Su Wei continued to maintain a shy smile, and she answered every question her sister asked. There were no clothes she could wear on the starship, so my sister cut her long skirt short for Su Wei to wear. Although Su Wei still looked a bit out of place, it was always better than wearing no clothes. My sister also sewed her a small cloth bag to hold her little things. Su Wei was very happy and said, "Thank you, sister." "You're welcome, just call me Anna." Anna smiled. "Little sister, do you want to sleep and rest for a while? There's still an hour left until the blue star." Blue star. Su Wei patted the wrinkles on the cloth bag and said with a puzzled expression, "I want to find my brother." She separated from Su Qingyu when she got on the starship. "I don't know where he is now." "Your brother is applying for admission documents, maybe he didn't come to see you so soon," Anna said, bending her fingers and supporting her chin. Enrollment. Su Wei paused in her hand for a moment. I don't know who she had heard of it in her memory. It seemed like she was going to school to study. "Yeah, aren't you students who registered for Blue Communication College? It's really unlucky to be kidnapped by pirates unexpectedly." Anna patted Su Wei's shoulder, feeling the sensation of her hands being so thin that only bones were left, and her heart ached even more. "I must have been enduring hardships with pirates." Su Wei. It seems that Su Qingyu has rewritten their origins. Su Weimu wore an innocent face and accepted Anna's sympathy calmly. Knowing that Su Qingyu should be fine now, Su Wei also calmed down and climbed onto the bed to sleep peacefully. Upon waking up, she felt that her spirit had improved significantly. Su Wei's eyes were dazed and she tilted her head, wanting to take another nap. "Wake up as soon as you wake up, we're almost there." Su Qingyu appeared in the room at some point, with a somewhat impatient tone. He also changed into a new outfit, with a dark blue uniform that made his figure even thinner and taller. He had sharp black short hair with a hint of blue at the end, which was a manifestation of impure bloodline. True Chinese ancestry, their hair was pure black, and people like him had to go through several generations of mixed race to do so. Su Wei had to yawn and get up, rubbing her eyes as she asked, "Do you want to go to school, but we don't have the money. She knows that going to school requires money, and it takes a lot of money. How can they two impoverished orphans go to school? General Ikes provided us with admission materials, and he also sponsored the tuition fees together. Speaking of this, Su Qingyu's tone slightly improved. Why? Su Wei's previously dazed head suddenly cleared up a lot. There won't be any pies falling from the sky. Don't be fooled by others, her cheap brother. Su Wei's thoughts were all reflected on her face, and Su Qingyu snorted in a strange tone, the importance of that information is much more valuable than you imagine. Besides, it's just money. If we succeed in enrollment, it's not even them who will benefit. Our identity and academic status are all federal citizens. Even if we study abroad in the future, we can only serve the federal government. He spends money to cultivate talents for the federal government, and it seems that he has made a profit. But let's wait and see if we can enroll. If we can't enroll, everything we say is in vain. As one of the 5 major military academies, Lontong College selects students with a minimum of C-level mental strength to be admitted. Su Qingyu said, met Su Wei's mosquito-repellent eyes, and twitched the corner of her mouth. She knew she didn't understand, so she closed her mouth and waited quietly until she arrived. Su Wei didn't understand the complexity, but she knew that her tuition fees should not be a problem anymore. She felt relieved and squinted for a while holding on to her pillow. Bomb. The starship has arrived at its destination, Blue Star. Please leave in an orderly manner. The radio repeated this sentence 3 times, and Su Qingyu pulled Su Wei up from the bed and dragged her straight away, as if she was not a person, but an object. Su Wei was overwhelmed by his trembling all the way, and half of her drowsiness woke up. She slowly stood up straight and looked around like a curious baby. These are the optical brains of the 2 of you, hoping to see you in the army in the future. Axe seemed to be waiting for them at the door. The 2 of them came over and handed them 2 round balls. Su Qingyu took over and said, "Thank you, General. Let's go enroll first." Ike smiled and said hello to him for cleverly avoiding his own problem. Su Qingyu pulled Su Wei down from the starship, which was parked at a dedicated landing port. The 2 of them went out, surrounded by a sea of people busy with their journey. Su Qingyu found a place with fewer people and bound the optical brain. Turning his head to look at Su Wei, he looked dumbfounded as he was holding his bare brain. He sighed and helped her operate, all right. The bound optical brain was worn on her wrist like a small watch. Su Wei curiously shook her hand and found that it seemed to be integrated with her own hand, as if it had a rectangular cloth strip attached, and the buckle could not be undone. The optical brain is a citizen's ID card, and money is also stored in it. When traveling and eating, it is used to swipe it. Su Qingyu did a lot of homework on the starship, teaching her hand-to-hand how to use the optical brain. Although Su Wei is silly, she is not stupid. She can use it after just one operation, just like a child who gets a new toy. She is extremely happy. Let's go buy clothes first. This outfit is really shabby, Su Qingyu said, saving face. Of course, he couldn't bear the looks from others. Although it was not malicious, it still made him feel like he was on pins and needles. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Mental Power Test. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Mental Power Test. Su Wei doesn't mind, she can wear anything and nod. The commercial street is not far from here, 2 people walk over. I don't know who dropped a roll of rope on the ground, but Su Wei's sharp eyes caught sight of it. Due to her professional habits, she ran over and picked up the rope. Her little brain looked around, but no one came to claim it. She confidently stuffed the rope into her small cloth bag, making it bulge. Su Wei quickly caught up with Su Qingyu. She only left for a while, and Su Qingyu didn't notice either. When she went to the mall, Su Qingyu bought a few sets of clothes herself and went to the women's clothing store to have the waiter pick out a few dresses for Su Wei. Su Wei couldn't wear them anymore, so she changed into a light yellow daisy dress. There is no girl who doesn't like new clothes. Su Wei's face is visibly happy, and Su Qingyu also looks at her with much pleasure. Not to mention anything else, his cheap sister looks pretty good. But with so many things, I still need to buy a storage ring. A storage ring, like an optical brain, is almost a must-have for everyone, but its price is not cheap. Su Qingyu bought 2 of the smallest sizes and also spent a lot of money. After receiving the storage ring, Su Wei put her belongings inside. Su Qingyu watched as she took out stones, knives, parts, wrenches, ropes, and some miscellaneous items from her pocket, choking silently. Then the two rushed to the college, and Su Qingyu called for a flying machine. Su Wei sat in the back seat, peeking out the window at the bizarre world outside, occasionally exclaiming in amazement. Nowadays, there are very few cars that walk on the ground in this world. Aircraft have replaced most means of transportation, and the improvement of aerial orbits has greatly accelerated the speed of travel. Su Qingyu didn't have such a big reaction, but Su Wei's actions still made him feel embarrassed. The driver smiled and chatted with him. Are you 2 students who came from other planets and registered for school? Su Qingyu nodded awkwardly and said, yes, my sister is here for the first time and is curious about everything she sees. It's like this, Blue Star has a well-developed economy in many fun places. You can go around and take a look when you have time. 70% of Blue Star is covered in water, and the scenery is breathtaking. The driver kindly introduced them. Okay, make sure you have time, Su Qingyu perfunctorily concluded the topic. The Lontong Academy is ahead, there are quite a few people queuing up here, the driver sighed. Su Qingyu then looked out the window and saw several long queues in front of a huge building, all waiting for students to sign up for the test. He felt a little excited and a little timid inside. He turned his head to tell Su Wei not to be nervous, but found that Su Wei was already sleeping by the window like a dead pig. Su Qingyu. Stupid little sister. The driver took several turns and finally found a vacant spot to stop, but there were too many people and it was difficult to find a parking spot. Let's go, come down. Su Qingyu mercilessly grabbed Su Wei's collar and pulled him off the back seat. Su Wei yawned and said, is it here? Well, let's go test our mental strength. Don't be nervous, Su Qingyu clenched his sweaty palm, feeling as if the sky was on his head. Su Wei was puzzled and said, I'm nervous, I'm not nervous, am I? Su Qingyu didn't want to talk to her and left a word to follow closely, then lifted his foot and walked towards the side of the long queue. She grabbed her hair and obediently followed behind his buttocks. Hey, queue up, why are you still cutting in line? Seeing Su Qingyu walking straight from the end of the line to the front, the people behind were unhappy. They waited in line for so long, and if you say you cut in line, then cut in line. Su Qingyu didn't pay attention to them, but pointed out the optical brain display screen and said to the person in charge, I'm here to test. On the display screen was his completed admission information. The queue here was originally for filling out admission documents, but he wrote it in advance because he had a recommendation from Axe. If there were people who had filled out the information before and didn't have time to test, then they don't need to queue up anymore and just go inside to test their mental strength. The person in charge glanced at him and Su Wei, somewhat skeptical that Su Wei had reached the age of 12 for registration, but politely smiled and said, you come with me. He called for another person to come here and watch, then turned around and left with the 2 of them. There were also many people lined up in front of the mental strength testing room, and the person in charge brought them here. After explaining the testing operation for a while, they left first. The device for measuring mental strength is a helmet filled with small tubes. It is said that this is an improved version of a simulated holographic helmet. Previously, the instrument for measuring mental strength was too large and inconvenient to carry. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, it was time for Su Qingyu to queue up. He walked forward and, feeling a bit hesitant, the tester put on a helmet for him. Okay, relax a bit, don't feel stressed. The staff looked at the soaring mental state on the helmet and patted his shoulder with a soothing touch. Su Qingyu adjusted his mentality, his mental state slowed down, but he still continued to rise. Drop, drop. When reaching the critical point, the helmet made a sound, and the staff held a recording tablet to record Su Qingyu's mental strength. Su Qingyu, mental strength level A. A.level, Su Qingyu was overjoyed and after taking off his helmet, he thanked the staff. The next one is Su Wei. Su Qingyu didn't rush to leave, but waited beside him. He was probably also nervous, afraid that Su Wei might not have enough mental strength to go to school. Su Wei was greeted by the staff and approached. She looked curiously at the helmets in their hands, resembling a cute little squirrel holding a pine cone. The staff was also amused, but they didn't dare to delay and put on the helmet for her. She didn't feel much, but looking at the complicated expressions of the staff, she seemed to have noticed something was wrong. There is no other reason why the staff's expressions are strange, but the mental value on the helmet skyrocketed too quickly. Drip. Sizzle, sizzle. Suddenly, there was a chaotic sound of electric current exploding in her ear. Su Wei frowned and before she could speak, the helmet was taken off by the staff the next second. The surprised expression on the staff's face had not yet subsided. He and another colleague glanced at each other as if they had reached some agreement unconsciously. Sorry, little sister, this helmet is a bit broken. I'll go and replace it for you. The staff member holding the helmet smiled gently at Su Wei and said in a friendly tone. She certainly didn't mind and nodded obediently. Quickly, the staff brought back a new helmet, but it was different from the previous one. This helmet was pure white and looked mysterious. The staff put on Su Wei's helmet and retested her. I don't know why, but during this test, Su Wei felt a bit dizzy, as if she was feeling tired from overusing something. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Command System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Command System, Ding. Su Wei heard a light noise coming from her helmet, and then the helmet was taken off. The expression on the staff's face was very joyful. Su Wei, spiritual power level S, congratulations, little sister. The staff rarely said an unrelated word to her, but it didn't catch the attention of others. Their attention was all focused on his previous sentence. Spirit level S. You should know that there are very few people with a total interstellar spiritual power exceeding the S. level. According to incomplete interstellar statistics, there are no more than 10,000 people with a total interstellar spiritual power exceeding the S. level, and Su Wei is one in 10,000 of them. Thank you. Su Wei clearly didn't know the seriousness of the matter, and after thanking the staff, she was ready to leave. She walked up to Su Qingyu and realized that his face was not as surprised as she had imagined, but rather a bit ugly. Brother. Su Wei tilted her head to look at him with some confusion. Su Qingyu regained his senses and seemed to re-examine her, saying in a faint tone, "Let's go." Su Wei was a bit confused and didn't know why Su Qingyu was in a bad mood again, but it was rare for her to touch his mold without speaking. However, just after they left, the staff changed the helmet back to the previous style and urgently handed over Su Wei's information to the principal's office. The person who passed the mental strength test walked through another channel, and after the two walked out, someone registered their information. A level of mental strength and S level of mental strength. The person with the registration information saw Su Wei's information and their surprised voice changed tone. Su Qingyu's eyebrows became increasingly gloomy. He never imagined that Su Wei's talent was not only good, but also very good, even better than him. Where on earth is he worse than this fool? Cough, cough. The person who noticed his own loss of composure coughed a few times to cover it up and asked the two of them with a friendly expression, "Which faction do you want to go to?" Command faction, warrior faction, or wandering faction. Su Qingyu was already prepared. Command department. Su Wei looked at him and then said, I'll go to the command center too. Su Qingyu frowned and glanced at Su Wei. The person who registered the information swiped a few times on Star Brain and quickly arranged the dormitory. Your dormitory has been arranged, you can check in today, and the school will officially start the day after tomorrow. Su Qingyu didn't say anything and just walked away, but Su Wei still remembered to say thank you to them. The two walked silently all the way to the dormitory building. Go to the dormitory by yourself, and when you're hungry, go buy something to eat. Do you know how to use your brain to pay? Su Qingyu looked at her. Su Wei nodded and said, yes. Su Qingyu didn't say much and went to find his own dormitory room. The men's dormitory building and the women's dormitory building were not in the same direction, and Su Qingyu didn't notice it himself. He sent Su Wei there, but he had to turn back to look for it. There is a dormitory number on the computer, and Su Wei walked in and looked at the elevator on the first floor, feeling a bit confused. What is this iron box for? Classmate, are you also going to the dormitory? What floor is it? A kind-hearted lady asked her. Su Wei didn't quite understand, but she obediently said, my room number is 2, number 513. What is the word after 2 that she doesn't recognize? Coincidentally, I'm building 2, 510. Let's go together. The little sister pulled her into the elevator, pressed down the floor, and started chatting with her in a very familiar way. My name is Eileen Rongluen, and you can call me Eileen. I'm from Sevastopol, with B.level mental strength. How about you? My name is Su Wei, with an S.level mental power. Su Wei thought for a while, but couldn't figure out the name of her garbage star, so she simply walked around. Wow, S.level mental power, you're so amazing. Irene was amazed, but she couldn't help but feel a little skeptical as she looked at Su Wei, the little one. You're too small, aren't you, Wei Wei? Are you over 12 years old? The minimum age for entering a military academy is 12 years old, but it seems that Su Wei's appearance is not yet 10 years old. Irene was so familiar that Su Wei didn't even realize it. The Vivi she was talking about was herself. After a moment of confusion, she said, I'm 13 years old this year. 13 years old, so young. I'm already 20 years old. I've been studying at home before, and it's rare for someone like you to come to a military academy at such a young age. Irene couldn't help but touch her head. For those with an average interstellar age of 300 years, teenagers are indeed a bit young. Su Wei. Touching my head feels so comfortable. The 5th floor is here. Vivi, please go back and rest first. I also want to declare peace to my family. Irene waved goodbye to Su Wei reluctantly, but she still had a lot to talk to Su Wei about. Okay. Home. Su Wei was stunned for a moment, and she remembered her cheap brother again. She also vaguely guessed the reason why Su Qingyu was unhappy. There is always a kind of person in the world who cannot see others being good, even though their heart may not be very bad. Su Wei has been crawling and rolling among beggars for so many years, seeing more malicious intent, and most of those malice comes from beggars around her who are similar in situation to herself. They are not doing well on their own, and they cannot see anyone else doing well. Su Wei is different. It has nothing to do with what others do, as long as they can live. But if Su Qingyu is also like those beggars, she thinks she should use some means. I finally found a cheap brother, although a bit fierce, he is also her only relative in this world. Su Wei thought and used her brain to brush open the dormitory door. The dormitory is a single room, with a large French window, a big bed that looks very soft beside it, a small bathroom at the entrance, and then a desk with a wardrobe opposite it. What's even more thoughtful is that the entire wall is covered with pink wallpaper. Su Wei really likes this shiny color. Wow, It's so soft. Su Wei was shocked as she sat on the bed. She had never sat on something so comfortable before. She happily hopped on the bed, only to stop playing when she was tired. Su Wei lay on the bed and watched the optical brain, only to find that Su Qingyu had sent several videos over 10 minutes ago. It's still Su Qingyu who added her own optical brain. Brother. Read all these common sense and remember, don't go out and make a fool of yourself. Su Wei puffed up her cheeks, a deceitful and cheap brother. She wanted to give Su Qingyu a good answer, but found herself unable to type, which made her even more depressed. Don't you know how to teach character recognition now? Fortunately, the optical brain also had a voice reply function, and Su Wei struggled for a while before understanding it. She replied with a soft and sticky word. She spent the whole afternoon watching videos in her room, and when she was very hungry, she drank a bottle of nutrient solution that didn't taste very good. It wasn't until noon the next day that Eileen knocked on the door and called out to eat. Isn't that right, Vivi? Why do you still drink nutrient solution? Erin opened the door and saw the nutrient solution in Su Wei's mouth, her eyes wide open. I've tried it once and I don't want to drink it anymore. It's too bad to drink. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. 5 Major Military Academies. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Chapter 9. 5 Major Military Academies. Su Wei blinked her eyes, covered up the leftover food, and let out a soft hiccup. It's okay, isn't it? Anyway, as long as she can fill her stomach after eating, she has very low expectations. And even if you want to drink it, don't drink this cheap brand. Not only is it difficult to drink, but it also doesn't make you feel full. Eileen was always straightforward, and after speaking, she realized that she seemed to have poked someone's pain. If she had money, who would drink this nutrient solution? She looked at Su Wei, who was weak and helpless, feeling remorseful. She quickly changed the topic and said, let's go to the school cafeteria and have a look. I heard them say that the food at this school is decent and not very expensive. Okay, let me tell my brother. Su Wei heard her explain, and she did show interest. Plus, she seems to have a little bit of money now, so it shouldn't be a problem to go eat, right? She sent a message to Su Qingyu. Brother, I'm going to the cafeteria with someone else. Are you coming? Su Qingyu quickly replied not to go, and then asked who that person was. Su Wei told him she was a female classmate in the dormitory, so Su Qingyu went back. Let's go then. I heard there are many handsome guys in this school. Cough, this tree is growing well. Irene patiently waited for Su Wei to finish the communication. Just as she was about to chat with her about some little girl's thoughts, she remembered her age and immediately gave her a ha-ha eye to avoid it. Su Wei tilted her head to look at her. How can it be said that it is one of the 5 major military academies? This canteen is built in a grand manner, and it is said to have 3 floors in total. The first floor is for dine-in, and the food is cheap. The second floor is a hotel for checking in outside the school, Shaogui. The third floor is a private room, with daily special dishes and equally beautiful prices. After listening to Eileen's explanation, Su Wei felt that there was a reason why the canteen could be built so large. There weren't many people on the first floor, and Erin pulled her to sit down next to her. Her slender fingers touched the table, and a semi-transparent light blue screen appeared out of thin air. There are Dandan noodles, one of the 5 military academies, with such a retro cuisine. Irene exclaimed, flipped through the menu and poked her finger on the screen. Su Wei looked at that thing very novel. Although she learned in the video that ordering now follows this mode, she was still a bit surprised to see it with her own eyes. Irene ordered the dishes, reached out and pressed her brain against the screen. A blue light swept over and the screen displayed the message of successful payment. Irene waved her hand and turned off the screen, holding her cheeks and watching Su Wei's clumsy ordering behavior, couldn't help but laugh. Su Wei ordered a bowl of noodles that looked delicious and 2 round things that looked like mantou. The name was Johugwa, and she paid her a total of 12 star coins. Irene, can you talk to me about what these 5 major military academies are? I've heard you say it many times. Su Wei looked at her with a perfectly blank expression on her face. Her cheap brother didn't send her any information about this. You don't even know about the 5 major military academies, Vivi. You live in a very remote place. Upon hearing this, Eileen was slightly surprised, but considering Su Wei's weak self-esteem, she slowly said. The 5 major military academies refer to the most powerful military academies in the Xuanji Galaxy. Initially, there was no such ranking, and the establishment of schools was only to cultivate talents to defend the galaxy. However, since the galaxy was divided into 2 factions, the Empire and the Federation, students on their planet have started to dislike each other and everyone wants to punch each other. 500 to 600 years have passed, and their fighting style has become very elegant. It is a tradition to decide which faction's people are more powerful through the once every 3 years Interstellar Academy competition. The 5 major military academies have also fluctuated many times, and their rankings have remained stable in the past few hundred years. All of them are our military academies, Eileen said as she picked up her fingers. The rankings for the last Interstellar Academy competition were Imperial Academy, Huaxia Academy, Lihil Military Academy, Lontong Academy, and Shatan Military Academy, respectively. Our Lontong Academy and Lihil Military Academy belong to the Federal faction, while the other 3 are Imperial. Su Wei nodded in confusion. Irene sighed and said, however, Lontong College is going downhill. In recent years, the students have been getting worse and worse. They prefer to go to Huaxia College, which also admits federal students. Huaxia College. The name sounded like the academy of her previous life, which piqued Su Wei's interest. Yeah, that's it. Irene just spoke up to prepare for science popularization when she saw the delivery robot rolling its small wheels and walking over, and immediately stopped talking. Su Wei also looked at this little guy, who looked like a short pillar. His head was like an upside-down bowl covering the pillar, and 2 oval-shaped white mung bean eyes blinked at the 2 of them. Su Wei. She also blinked in confusion. The meal has been delivered, wish you a pleasant meal. The little robot made a mechanical sound of pretending to be human, which didn't sound unpleasant, but rather a bit cute. Thank you. Irene laughed heartily, opened the little robot's belly, took out the meal, and then closed it. You're welcome. The little robot replied rigorously. As soon as it turned its head, it was startled by Su Wei, who crouched down and stared at it at an unknown time. The wheel took a step back. I saw Su Wei learning from Eileen's movements just now, opening her belly, observing for a while and then closing it again, with a sudden realization expression on her face. Little robot. She hugged her little belly and quickly slipped away. It moved very fast and soon disappeared at the end of the hall. What were you looking at just now? Irene had thoughtfully arranged the meal and casually asked when Su Wei sat back. The stomach of that pillar is equipped with insulation and heating devices, no wonder the food is still hot when taken out. Su Wei looked down at the steaming food in front of her and couldn't help but swallow her saliva. It looks pretty good. Haha, that's not a pillar, it's a delivery robot commonly used in restaurants nowadays, but it's only common on big planets like Blue Star. Other economically underdeveloped planets probably still use manual labor, Eileen said, getting used to Su Wei's surprised expression and waving her hand well. Hurry up and eat while it's hot. For the first time, Su Wei tasted steaming hot noodles, strong noodles, and delicious soup, which left her without any image. She also had a beautiful face, which didn't make people feel rude. Hiccup. Su Wei finished her last sip of soup and let out a milk hiccup. Her face was flushed with the heat, looking like a doll with makeup on. Irene couldn't help but find it funny and also found her so real and cute. She pulled a tissue from the table and said, "Wipe your mouth." End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I Can't Read. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I Can't Read. Su Wei brought it over and casually wiped it. Although her stomach was already full, Su Wei looked at the two white flour mantou that had not yet moved her mouth. Considering the capacity of her stomach, she generously gave one to Irene. Irene was flattered and said, "Ah, thank you, Vivi." Su Wei. "You're welcome. If someone treats her well, she should also treat them well. This thing, which looks like white flour mantou, is crispy and a faint milk smell spreads in the mouth. It will not be very sweet. Finally, when I swallow it, I feel that some small particles remain on the tip of my tongue, with a sweet taste. Delicious." Su Wei's eyes lit up. This time, because she was no longer hungry, she ate a bit politely, but the speed of eating was not slow, as if afraid of being snatched by others. Irene really can't figure out what's delicious about the 9 fangua sold all over the street, but seeing Su Wei eating so well, she seems to have an appetite too. After the two of them had eaten and drunk their fill, Eileen was very familiar with Su Wei, who she had only known for less than 2 days, and went out to visit the campus. Su Wei naturally agreed, but she was very puzzled. According to reason, people with personalities like Eileen should not have friends. Irene replied, "There are many sisters in the family, all of whom are talented people. Fighting with scheming bitches every day makes her unwilling to socialize." Su Wei asked what a scheming bitch was, and Eileen explained it to her in a lengthy manner. In addition to scheming prostitutes, there are also green tea prostitutes, man prostitutes, white lotus flowers. Sister Vivi, you are the easiest to be deceived when you are so young. Don't worry, I will cover you up in the future. Erin patted her chest, promising. She looked at Su Wei, who was so weak and completely ignored her S.level mental strength, which was enough to press herself to the ground with a hammer. Su Wei smiled and said, "Thank you, Sister Erin." Irene let out a sigh and hugged her in her arms, rubbing her for a while Su Wei let her go like a obedient rabbit. Why isn't such a cute little guy her sister? Irene remembered her own group of ghosts and snakes, leaving behind heartfelt tears once again. They strolled around for a while and then went back to the dormitory. Su Wei looked at the optical brain and didn't reply to any of the communications she sent to Su Qingyu. Stingy brother. She muttered and buried her head in sleep. The next morning, Su Wei was awakened by the crazy sound of knocking on the door. She went over to open the door in a daze, but was only realized after being interrupted by Eileen that school was about to start today. She quickly packed up and went to college. Lontong College is divided into 3 colleges. Command Department, Warrior Department, and Wandering Department. In the command system, students learn command skills, adaptability, terrain analysis, and observing enemy weaknesses on the battlefield. Due to the excessive consumption of mental energy, only A.level and above individuals with divine power are recruited. Warriors belong to the category of brute force, learning fighting skills. It doesn't matter whether their minds are there or not. Anyway, with the command in place, it's not their turn to think. Everyone can go ahead. Wandering is a nickname for logistics, learning how to repair mechs, store inventory, distinguish between monsters and plants, and even learn how to cook. Otherwise, if there is not enough food during the competition, everyone will be forced to withdraw, which will be embarrassing. When Su Wei ran to the command center, there were already many people in the classroom. The command center is a long cylindrical building, with blue gradient wall tiles emitting a faint light in the sunlight. The top of the interstellar psychic detector is installed on its head. Once a psychic rampage is detected, the person who rampaged will be imprisoned with lightning speed until their psychic power returns to normal. Su Wei looked left and right and saw Su Qingyu somewhere. She quickly ran over. The uniform of the command center is unified, with a sky like deep blue as the main color tone, and silver patterns outlined in the details to showcase the blue star style. This set of clothes is undoubtedly very suitable for Su Qingyu. His short hair is neatly arranged, and there are no wrinkles on the top and bottom of the robe. Wearing such a gentle color, it seems that there is also some tolerance between his eyebrows and eyes. He heard footsteps and glanced at Su Wei, then his eyes showed a hint of disgust. Su Wei. What kind of tolerance? Indeed, she was mistaken. I got up late, my clothes are all messy. Su Qingyu lifted his eyelids and gestured to her. Su Wei lowered her head and indeed found that her small cloak had flipped over. She reached out and straightened it. The clothing of the girls in the command department is mostly the same as that of the boys, except for an additional cape. Su Qingyu chuckled and said, "Stupid. It's like cursing her like this can suppress jealousy in your heart." Su Wei pretended not to hear and curiously asked, "What are you preparing for?" "Let's have class together," Su Qingyu perfunctorily said. Su Wei exclaimed and stood beside him, looking at the others. She noticed many people with different colors of hair, red, blue, gold, black, and even green. Su Wei was shocked. "Everyone here." The man who had been standing at the front suddenly spoke out, and then the door automatically closed, making a subtle sound. The students quickly quieted down, which made the man very satisfied. He opened the booklet in his hand and looked at it, saying, "This class is okay, the quality is good, but the mental strength is weak." Ha! He seemed to have seen something strange and paused for a moment before murmuring softly, "Damn it, there's still an S." Su Wei's ears twitched and she looked up at him, only to find that the others didn't seem to hear what he was saying. She blinked. "Cough cough, I am your commanding teacher. My name is Lianqi, and in the future, you can just call me Lianqi." Lianqi coughed, "I said earlier, you must follow the rules in my class. If you behave well, I can let you go." After he finished speaking, his expression suddenly became solemn. "But when you come to a military academy, you must do well and be perfect. On the battlefield, you won't have a second chance to make mistakes. I hope you can all learn and achieve success, and bring glory to your country. Do you understand?" Everyone spoke in unison, "I understand." Lianqi glanced at everyone who was less than 100 and nodded with satisfaction. "Now let's learn the basic concepts of command. I believe everyone has already understood them, but I also want to introduce them here." He waved his hand and a light blue display screen appeared in mid-air. Lesson 1, The Role of Command. You can take a look first. Everyone looked at the screen seriously, only Su Wei had a bewildered expression on her face. She can't read. Su Wei turned her head to look at Su Qingyu again, and seeing him watching with great interest without any intention of paying attention to her, she became even more introverted. Seeing Lianqi about to turn the page and talk about new knowledge, Su Wei shrugged her nose and resolutely raised her hand, shouting, "Teacher Lian, I can't read. I can't read. Unable to read. Literacy. Word." In the quiet classroom where even a needle could be heard falling, Su Wei's bright voice was particularly striking. Su Qingyu silently moved aside. Lianqi. End of this chapter.